Today, I want to talk about building relationships for long-term coaching success. I've had a ton of coaches now that I've been blessed to be able to be with a company that I am getting a lot of clients through. Shout out mindpump. And that I'm able to help a lot of people through. I also have a lot of coaches asking me, how do I build that relationship with my clients? Because, I will humbly say I got to a point now. This is where the humble part comes in. It took me a long time to get here. I'm in my 9th year, and it was not always this way. But I did get to a point now where over the last 12 weeks, I've only had one missed check-in, and that's between 22 clients. So been doing pretty good when it comes to that. And pretty much the way we look at that in online coaching is they're not missing their check-in, which means we're also consistently having conversations throughout the week. Also, that there's some type of relationship there where we both respect each other to get those things done and to continue the process and the journey. Because I look at this as a collaborative thing, and I've had a ton of questions asked about this. So I want to dive in and just talk about it. I have some notes here. I'm not the best at trying to remember all this stuff because there's a ton that I've also been able to pull over from psychology, and I do it in like real time just from studying it now in-depth studying it for a year and a half. And then also like just 9 years of coaching, like we are studying the human condition and just how we kind of operate and how humans operate. Of course, in our little view of the gym world and everything, we're going to talk about that a little bit today, but same sense. And since I've been sitting there and learning a ton, every time I take one of these classes, I'm always trying to, when I like read a chapter, I read something, I try to bring like a coaching application to it, even if it doesn't quite make sense. Like I did we'll talk about it. I did like an ethics class, and there's some stuff that we'll talk about and how that converts over. But really, I don't know. I've always been somebody, I think in coaching, I think this is where it just really starts. And this is where I failed a ton, is a lot of us think we're failing because, we didn't have the program right. We didn't have the nutrition right. Like the movements weren't right, whatever it might be. But usually, I almost can guarantee you most of the time, it's because poor relationships. And I've been there. I've been there multiple times in my life where, I've signed people up for 3 months. And then after those 3 months, they are like, oh, I'm not quite, I don't want to re-sign. And, in 3 months, if you have a good amount of weight to lose, if we got to go through a reverse diet phase, if we got to do all these things, there's a lot of stuff that probably won't be accomplished when it comes to like the overall goal if we're thinking of sustainable nutrition, sustainable training routines, all that good stuff. Now, that being said, if we don't build that relationship, that person doesn't want to re-sign. Now, it's not about the re-sign per se. That's what I want to talk about, right? I think a lot of us get so caught up in that alone to where I don't even stress that fact really until it needs to be stressed, right? So, and I'll talk kind of about that here in a little bit. But as I was saying, I think most of us coaches think that we fail in coaching because of programming and nutrition stuff. I almost can guarantee you, if you just focus on tightening up relationships, not just in coaching, but overall in life, all over the place, with your grandparents, with your parents, with the people close to you, with friends, family, like whoever it is in your house, like all those things, those relationships transfer over. Like having deeper relationships with all those people will help you then have deeper relationships with your clients. Or if you are a client listening to this, having a good relationship with your coach is key. Shout out to Kyle Baxter. He was my former coach just over a year ago, or not even a year ago yet. He was my coach for about 3 years. And he's my homie. Like I look at him as a friend, as a mentor, somebody I can always go to when I got something on my mind and just kind of get off my chest. He's doing good. I'm proud of where he's at in life, right? So it's just this thing now where we've built that, and it was built over time, right? And I think that's part number 2, right? Like we gotta give this stuff time, but there's things that we can do at the very beginning, I think, that help expedite that process. And that's what I really want to talk about today. So let's get to it, right? So why do relationships matter? Well, I want you to think of something, and this is something I picked up from I believe it was like a Psych 102 course, really just looking at parent-child relationships, is the consistent warmth, or in this case with coaching, I would say more so just consistent show up right. Like you as the coach are showing up consistently for them, giving them that warmth, quote unquote, right? That feeling of, oh, I am taken care of, or consistent security, I guess you could say, better term. And then looking at that, and structure leads to better outcomes, right? If we have consistent warmth, or that consistent just structure, I guess, in general, it will lead to better outcomes. Same in coaching relationships. If I'm with my kids and I'm upset with something that happened, if I just nail on them for all the things they did wrong, they're probably not going to try to do the thing the right way, right? They're just going to be focused on the bad stuff. So bringing that just consistent warmth to the conversation of, hey, you know what? We're all human. It happens. Like, we're good. Hey, we have structure on this back end. Let's get to it. Always leads to better outcomes. Same thing with clients. Like, I've realized that time and time again with them, with myself, even how I talk to myself, right? Coaches who are listening, I think having that same structure for yourself, having some type of structure that you follow, and then also giving yourself that consistent kind of grace along the way of, okay, I'm learning people. As long as you're checking the boxes that gets you to that point where you're trying to go, like, we're golden. So why do relationships matter? Well, we just talked about it a bit of it, but trust, it's the foundation for change. Like, if we can't trust each other from a coach standpoint, or the client can't trust the coach, we're not going to get anywhere very fast at all. Not that any of these goals we can accomplish crazy fast anyways, when we think of sustainable, lifelong, unbreakable goal setting and accomplishing it. But the fact of the matter is, if we don't have trust, that person's not going to want to do the training routine that you set up. They're not going to want to make the change that you recommend. And think about this. They already hired you, right? So there's some trust there, right? But we still got to show them, right, why they should trust us. And clients listening, if you're getting coached, like, your coach should be doing these things that I'm about to talk about here. And one of the things that I think about goes back to a study that Bowlby and Answorth did. So this is an attachment theory thing from one of my psychology courses that we learned. And in the attachment theory, they talk about how secure attachments build confidence and resilience. A coaching bond works that same way. Clients are going to thrive when they feel safe and supported. And coaches, you're going to be able to thrive when you're able to make a client feel that way. Now, how do we do that? Well, I think the biggest thing is in that initial conversation. When we have an onboarding call and we're sitting with those people and we're talking and we're just getting to know them more, right? Yes, understanding with the training they've been doing. Yes, understanding the nutrition they've been doing. It matters. It matters what your program is going to be, of course, right? Understanding their limitations, all these things really do matter. But like, there are parts in there where you can build trust too. Like, if they tell you something with their training and maybe they've been doing something a certain way and it doesn't really line up with what their goal might be, that's a chance to just give education, give them education, an educational thing on, hey, well, we've been training this way. We have a goal to do this. Maybe we could try to do training in this way to elicit this result in a faster time, right? Something along those lines, not to berate them about doing anything wrong or anything, but just to try to build trust. Now, another thing that I love to do is more so talking about their life in general. What is their life outside of the gym? What's the support system look like? Do they have a spouse? Are they single? Do they have kids? Are they not planning to have kids? What do they do for a job, right? Like, all these things get me to understand a more, I guess I would look at it as like a family system perspective. Even if they don't talk about having a spouse or, having kids or anything like that, if I can just understand the dynamics of their life and build a deeper relationship on, okay, this is what they like to do, their hobbies, they like their job, they enjoy whatever they might do, and then maybe I need to go learn more about that job. But being able to have that deeper connection at the very start has helped me tremendously. And I do believe it can help a ton of other coaches out there do the same, right? I think just in writing this stuff down, like, I got a notebook right here at all times when I'm doing calls. And nowadays there's things like Fathom, like an AI note-taking system when you're on these meetings, to where you can literally have it go to a customer like based summary where it's like giving you everything you talked about, your questions you asked them, the questions they asked you, next steps, all that good stuff. So it makes it very simple. I love using those to help me with this side of it, right? Because now I use a coaching app, right? Everfit and stuff. And when we hop in there, whenever I have an onboarding call, I then put the very first note in there, has those notes with it. And I have their, family's name. I may have their favorite hobbies, all these good things that then I can call back on a week to week or day to day basis, depending on how much we communicate. That's dependent per client, right? But then I have these things. Now, instead of just being like, oh, hey, like, how are the kids doing? I can be like, oh, hey, how's Jason doing, right? Just a random name. I'm not going to throw in my clients' kids' names out there like that. But, hey, how's Jason doing today? Or, hey, how's Billy doing, right? The husband. Or, hey, how's Susan doing? Maybe that's their mom, right? Whatever it might be. Or I have a client right now who is, he does like singing. He does not choir, but right now he has like rehearsals and believe it's like more opera singing. Super, super cool. Awesome stuff. I think it's dope to have some type of hobby that you can ingrain your life into. Find that out about your client, right? I ask him, hey, how is the rehearsals going? When is the next show, right? All these things. And I do believe that is the key at the very start. Sorry, itchy ear. The key at the very start with the client to build that relationship. Clients who are listening, if your coach hasn't asked you this, like this is also stuff that we can bring up, right? As a coach, we do have a lot on our mind, right? Like we just want to make sure we get everything right when it comes to the training, when it comes to the nutrition, and there's a lot of info to gather. So I think just opening up those doors both ways and being able to have those conversations is great right off the rip, and then continuing those throughout week to week to week. Now, how do we build trust with our clients? Let's talk about it. Shout out to all the female coaches out there who understand this more than us male coaches. Not saying us male coaches don't. I know there's a ton out there who do. I'm starting to get it better myself, but I've learned from a ton of my female like mentors and colleagues in my life teach me that, showing empathy, aka listening first versus prescribing first, like listening first, prescribing second, is essential. Doesn't matter if it's a male or female, doesn't matter if they're non-binary, I don't care. Everybody wants to be heard. So if you're in your brain thinking about the prescription and everything else, we're already messing up. I catch myself doing this too. I have to slow myself down, really open up these ears and listen to what's being said to me. I think one of the biggest things here, that I learned from just life in general, I didn't need to take a medical ethics class to learn this, but they harped on this in there as well, was respect for persons equals honoring autonomy, right? So triple checking that your plan really does align with where they are now. That's listening before guiding, right? If we just kind of have in the back of our head, we saw some sales notes, maybe a sales call with them, we have some idea about where we want to go and what the plan's going to be, and we get in the call, we start talking about it, we get excited, right? We're juiced on it. I get it. I get juiced on this stuff too. But then we miss that mark. We miss that mark of really listening to what they need. And that can come from that conversation of what I just said before, of learning more about their life. Maybe at first you have this training program that's 4 or 5 days a week. It's going to be this perfect split. You have this nutrition plan, but then you find out that they just got a divorce. They're not fully divorced yet. They're separated. Maybe they're dealing with traveling back and forth with kids. They don't even have that amount of time because now they're working double hours to make up money. All these things start to interplay as you talk about their life. Well, that changed. I hope that you plan to change that training routine around slightly to some degree to match up with more of what they really need at that moment in time, and still work them closer to where you want them to go and where they want to go. And that just comes into being goes into being consistent, right? If we can be consistent, it's going to build reliability and credibility with our clients. This has happened to me time and time again. I've learned from it the hard way, where I'll open my mouth and I'll say something and maybe I don't do it. Well, I've now just broken that trust. Even if it comes a day later, 2 days later, without any kind of communication to, hey, Billy, I'm running behind on these things because I had a family event that I forgot to block off on my calendar, blah, 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 whatever the case may be. If there's no communication there with the client, from the client's perspective too, right? Like being consistent with your communication helps a ton. Now, I think this is a two-way street. This is a collaborative effort from a coach standpoint. Like, yes, this person is paying you money. You need to be reliable for them. You need to be consistent. And if you say you're going to do something, make sure that damn thing happens. Make sure what I do, I have a system. Like I said, the Fathom stuff, the AI stuff really helps after meetings when I'm on calls. What I also do is when I do like my Loom recordings, if I do anything like that, like I'm on a video like this and I want to have some notes, you can easily use AI stuff to help you figure out where to go and what tasks to do. Now it's up to you to figure out how do you track those tasks, but you better make sure you give yourself enough time. Like I always give myself a little bit more time than I know I really need. And it's happened time and time again where I've said like, hey, give me 72 hours to get this program done. And then 72 hours comes around. I'm like, I need to get this program done. And I'm happy I gave myself that amount of time, right? So it's just those little things that we can think of as a coach to be more consistent and reliable, to build that credibility with our clients. I think it just comes down to one, asking them, hey, how often do you like to be communicated with? And then asking them what kind of resources they like. Do they like just getting their training on a week-to-week basis? Maybe they like to get a podcast sent to them every now and again. Maybe they like the ability to just, chat a little bit more throughout the week. Whatever it might be, that thing that they like, just be consistent with them, build that credibility. And if you can do those things, you say you're going to do something and you can do it. If you can over deliver on the things you're saying as well, like that will boost this process tenfold. That's what I usually try to do. I give myself that buffer of like 72 hours and I try to get it back in 24. Even in 48, they're like, oh, cool. I was given this kind of 72-hour window, so I wasn't expecting it until then. Nope, we got you, right? And then I think that also goes into celebrating those small wins. So let's say I wrote a guide for a client and I gave them that guide and I wanted them to read it, and they went and read it and they said, oh, this really helped me understand this more. I'm celebrating that. I'm going to send them a voice note back. I'm going to be like, hey, this is awesome. I absolutely love that you understand this more. Now we can start to linking those dots together. For me, I always talk about building your unbreakable foundations so you can do this for life, right? Just getting hyped on those little things. When I scroll through client stuff and I see that there's a one rep PR that week, I'm stoked. I'm like, let's go. We're on it. Like I'm celebrating. I'm with them in it. And I mean, this just comes down to one, how I've felt in those moments for myself, right? Like celebrating small wins is huge. I think it's the thing that keeps us going in life. Like when I look at fatherhood, when I look at coaching, when I look at school, when I look at being a husband, all these things, I can pick up very small wins along the way, big wins too. But the little wins every single day is what keeps me going versus trying to only focus on those big things. And then, they don't come as often, right? And maybe now we're not as motivated, we're not as determined to keep it going. That's the last thing we want for our clients. Same thing for the coaches too. Like celebrate those small wins for yourself as well. Like when these clients are seeing these things, like celebrate with them. Like you two did this together, right? Like this is a collaborative effort. We're on point. And then I think from there, just allowing yourself to be flexible, right? Looking at things from like in school with multicultural psychology, there was a lot of talk about like cultural competence, right? So just being able to, I like to look at this as like being a lizard or a chameleon per se, right? In situations, being able to adapt really well, in adapting the approach to the person. It's the same as like adjusting anything for a client on the fly. For instance, I have a client right now who's going through it right now when it comes to family stuff and all this other stuff going on in their life. And training is not going to be the same this week. I told them we're going to take a break from tracking for the next 2 weeks because they've been tracking consistently for 3 months now and killing it time and time again, week after week after week. I told them, hey, let's just bust out the at-home training session, the sessions this week or into next week if we need to, right? So just being able to be flexible with the plan and I always like to have stuff in my back pocket, right? It's like, hey, when I'm building this plan out, cool, here's the ideal thing. It would be awesome to see this happen every single day. But then I also make sure that I'm giving myself something on the back end to be like, okay, we can always fall back to this, right? That's where I talk about unbreakable foundations. You as a coach need to figure out what that is for yourself. As a client, figuring out, hey, okay, where can I find flexibility in this routine? Because if we're thinking of longevity, we're thinking of doing this stuff for the long term, we do not need to be so rigid to every single little thing. Yes, we need to be consistent, but that's much different than being rigid. There's ways of being consistent, not rigid. And that's just where flexibility comes in, being able to adjust on the fly, educating your clients around. Maybe it's the macro profiles for each meal that help them get to their overall goals at the end of the day, and them understanding, okay, maybe I can double up here, and how much protein can I really get in a meal? And, all these things that play a role into how they're going to do things when things do go awry. Educate them beforehand. Give them that knowledge in little bits and pieces. You're not trying to give them everything at once, but this stuff comes up naturally in conversation as long as we're pulling on those things. That's why week to week, I always want to talk about nutrition to some degree. I always want to talk about training to some degree. I always want to talk about lifestyle to some degree so I can start to pull on these things. Because even if they don't tell me something, now when I'm replying, when I'm doing my thing, I can bring it up and then it sparks conversation. And then also just having clear boundaries, something that I think is very, very important. Obviously, clear professional boundaries prevent burnout and also foster long-term trust. So, don't, of course, I do any of the weird stuff when it comes to relationship stuff with clients. Y'all know what I'm talking about. Other than that, set clear boundaries for each other, right? I think as the client, they should be able to tell you, hey, on this day and this day, I'm not going to do this and I won't do that. Okay, cool. Like that's for you as the coach to be like, okay, understand why, and then coach around that. You as the coach, I myself will tell clients like, hey, if you don't hear from me after 8 p.m., that's because I'm with my family. Most likely going to be around 7 p.m., but sometimes I'll run it out to about 8. But from 8 to about 8 p.m. to about 9 a.m. in the morning, like if you don't hear from me, that's because I'm with my family, and that's like my boundary. And Sundays I don't do much, right? That's my family day. Every other day of the week I'm going hard over 12, 14, 16 hours a day sometimes. And yeah, I set those boundaries for myself, and that's good. Like we should have those things. But I think that's how we build trust with our clients, right? Showing empathy, listening first versus prescribing first. So listening first, prescribing second, being able to build consistency through following through with the actions you say you're going to do in a timely manner. That comes down to one, experience. Like we got to go through these things. I've shot myself in the foot time and time again. I've said that, trying to say, hey, I can do this in this amount of time, and it doesn't really work. So just making sure we can learn from those mistakes and keep moving forward is really important. I think that goes into celebrating small wins, right? Make sure you celebrate those for yourself and for your clients. Be flexible and make sure you set boundaries. Now, I think one more thing I want to talk about before I close it out is long-term success strategies, if I could talk. One of the biggest things that I get caught up in and clients get caught up in a lot of the times is the daily metrics, the daily data that we can pull on. That being said, let's focus on averages, not perfection, right? If we can have that mindset of consistency over perfection, we're going to go so far as a coach and for our clients. I mean, even in behavioral research in school, we see that like reliability and validity, like one bad data point doesn't ruin a study. Progress is in patterns and averages. Like whenever they run a study, that's why when we see like the 4-week studies and stuff, it works, right? It works. But to me, it just not too reliable or valid when I see a long-term study, just because those 4 weeks, right? It can be a little easier to dial everything in for 4 weeks, unless it's a complete trolled study. That's a different story. But if, we're looking at things and things aren't completely controlled over those 4 weeks, yeah, it might be a little easier to hit the nail on the head with things. But then what happens after those 4 weeks? What happens at 8 weeks? What happens at 16 weeks? What happens at 32 weeks? Like I want to know what's going on. And when these studies run longer and you can start to see averages, not just set data points on like weird days, we start to get a little bit better data. Now, that's what I like to do as a coach. I'm always telling clients, hey, can have one off day. Let's just do our best not to have two. Get right back on track the next day. We can have an off week. It happens. Let's just do our best to get back on track the next week. Like these things, and just focusing on averages and looking at, okay, hey, from a macro perspective, if we were, a little bit off one day, where our average is still about where we wanted to be when it comes to the overall goal at the end of the week. Awesome. Training wise, 7 days in the week, maybe you have 3 training days and you got 2 of those training days in. That's still great to me, right? Like that's still a great average at the end of the month. If, we're somebody who went from, barely training or 1 training day every single week or kind of on and off, right? There's so many different ways to look at this, but I think focusing on the averages of everything, not getting so caught up in the day-to-day stuff will really, really help build long-term success for you and your clients. Also, like I said earlier, educate plus communicate. Inform your clients, right? Give them like this is all part of the process. For me as a coach, I take pride in the fact that these people are hiring me to go on this journey with them when it comes to their health and fitness. And now it is my job as the coach to then educate them and communicate those things in a way that makes sense to them and that matters to them. I don't need to go down the rabbit hole of, a bunch of different, there's so many different things we could get into. My whole thing is making sure that we educate to get better adherence. That's my whole thing. So teaching along the way. If let's say I have a client who is reverse dieting and we're struggling to hit calories on a consistent basis. We're trying to get up there and let's say they're pretty low. Like we're trying to work up to 2,200 and they're down at 1,400 calories right now and consistently barely hitting that. Well, I'm not going to berate them about, hey, you're doing it wrong. You need to be here. You need to be here. You need to be here. What I'm going to do is educate them on why we want to work up to where we're going to. Maybe it's based on their TDEE. Maybe it's based on their height, their age, their weight, their activity level. That kind of gives us this base number of, hey, the body is calling for this set amount of calories on a daily basis based on these things. We want to work toward that. Now, where you are now, we don't need to make that big jump. I just want to make some small change this week to get us closer to that number. Can we add a banana in? Can we, whatever that little thing is for that week, celebrate the small win the next week, right? That gets us closer to that. Reason being, if we can get closer to that, we now have the body's ability to then have a faster metabolism. It's able to recover faster. We're giving it the nutrients it needs to then go build that muscle from the muscle building signal we're trying to send with training, whatever it might be, right? So there's these little things that we can do to bridge the gap between what's going on in coaching on a week-to-week basis to then where we're trying to get them in the stuff that we do know in depth as a coach, right? That's your time to dive into it and talk about it more, but relate it to what's going on in real time. I think also to making sure that, as a coach, we have some type of mindset work for your own long-term success. I know getting clients to do this can be kind of difficult, but I am a firm believer in this. Just being able to have mastery or autonomy within your own mind is huge. I'm working on this myself again because it is very easy to get caught up in there as a coach. And it's a good thing. Like we need to be thinking on a consistent basis about these things, but also I think giving yourself reassurance that, hey, okay, like this is a collaborative thing. Me and my client are working together. We got this. It really does help. Not only that, like just being able to, one thing I've noticed in meditation is just better focus during conversations. So that whole thing we talked about with listening, boom, like that's key. We got to be able to listen. Meditation has helped me a ton with that. Just any mindset work really that helps you feel like, okay, cool. Maybe you feel like you have a motivational thing. Maybe it's a time issue. Like you feel like you can't get past that. Whatever mindset work you feel like you need to do, I would say make sure it's in there on a consistent basis. And also don't forget personal connections. Like we said with the clients, it's very, very important. We know how to do it now, right? We've talked about it. There's a lot more. And if you want to talk about it more, hit me up. We can dive into it. There's a ton we can talk about. But my whole thing is understanding the individual's context, right? Their stresses, their family, the work situation will always improve the outcomes. They even say this when we look at how therapists are doing stuff, and they're starting to pick up this more holistic approach to like understanding, okay, the more I understand about this person's whole life, the better my outcome will be with them. The same goes for coaching. And that being said, don't forget your own personal connections, right? Having coaches in your corner, having a group of people that you can lean on. Like, I didn't get to where I'm at by myself. Damn straight. I had a ton of help along the way. And I think having those people to go talk to about things really does help, right? Like, I didn't come up with all this stuff on my own. Like I said at the beginning, a lot of the personal connection stuff and being able to listen before prescribing comes from, there's a ton of female coaches out there that I've talked to about this that have helped me. And I don't want to forget anybody's names. I don't want to name drop right this second. But for real, just get out there and connect with more coaches. If you're at a gym, like, make sure you're talking. This isn't it is weird because coaching, you don't have to keep everything so close. We're all going to go a lot farther if we just communicate and talk to these things. Clients listening, right? Like, you're all going to go that much farther if you all communicate together and talk through your struggles. I have a little group chat for all my clients, and it's so cool to see that, they share their struggles, they share their little wins throughout the week, and it's a good feeling to see. So I guess just let's get a quick recap. This has been a longer episode than I thought I was going to do, but just to recap, remember, relationships equal the difference between quick results and lasting transformation. Poor relationships might not be able to get those results as fast. We might not be able to last or keep those lasting transformations. Stronger relationships, much better, much better. I think one of the things here is just to remember, hey, long-term success isn't about those single variables, right? Weight, macros, the workouts on a day-to-day basis. It's about the systems, the support, and the consistency. All right, everybody, I'm Coach Shavante. It was good chatting with you. I hope this helps for any coaches out there who are listening, any clients who are listening. Let's all build great connections so we can get further together and stay unbreakable. I'll talk to y'all next time.